In the early part of our metaphysical lives, I think that most of us have felt that we came to the study to overcome some negative condition, some ill health or lack of supply, lack of harmony in human relationships, and we probably were introduced to the subject of a truth study to meet such conditions and to turn sickness into health, or lack into abundance, or unhappiness into happiness. In our work we have learned that this is only the kindergarten stage of spiritual living. It's only the very first step into the mystical life. Now, you will realize, of course, that there are many, many people who have no interest in truth or God beyond the meeting of their human needs. In other words, if through truth or through God their human needs are met, that satisfies them completely, and their interest goes no further. In our work, the meeting of the human need is only a first step, because it isn't our goal. Our goal is God realization, or the mystical life in which we ultimately come to where we can say with Paul, I live, yet not I, Christ liveth my life. Now, if in our early step our thought continues to be along the line of overcoming this discord and rising above that in harmony, removing this ill, or restoring good here, and if we do successfully attain harmony in place of discord, it should be to us an evidence that behind the experience there lies a principle. In other words, if I ask a practitioner for help to overcome an ill, and if they succeed in doing that for me, certainly it is clear that the overcoming of the ill is an effect, that behind that effect there was a cause, that is, something that removed the ill. The removing of the ill was only an effect, but something did the removing. Now, what is it? Or, supposing that you pray or meditate or treat for the overcoming of some discord in your experience, and well, we'll just say that it's a boil, and the next day the boil disappears. Now, if you stop to think about that, the disappearing of the boil is an effect. Now, what made it disappear? What happened that that boil that was there yesterday has disappeared today? Or if there was a fever, you asked for help, and it was 103, and an hour later it was 100, and an hour later it was whatever the normal is supposed to be. You have witnessed an effect, but what caused it? What brought it about? And those who are merely satisfied that the effect took place and then express their gratitude have not yet awakened to the fact that something of a miraculous nature happened, something in the nature of a miracle, something in the nature, well, a human being couldn't understand it, a doctor couldn't explain it. Here it is, now it's gone. Something must have happened, and if your curiosity hasn't been awakened, if your interest hasn't been awakened, you are still asleep after the healing. And you may have a dozen healings, but eventually the day will come when it just won't happen anymore, and you'll wonder why. If, however, when you have had one or two of these healings and you begin to ponder what happened, what caused it, what lies behind this healing, then you are beginning to search for God. You are beginning to search for truth. You are beginning to ask for the reason underlying a visible effect. And this means that your interest in God is being awakened for God's sake, not merely for the effect's sake. And then it is that you really begin your journey on the spiritual path. Your spiritual journey does not begin until you have looked behind the effect and wondered what brought it about, and then began the search, the study, the investigation to find out what made this happen, how was it brought about, where is the reason for this occurrence. Then, of course, you have left the realm of those who come for loaves and fishes, and you are now coming for the principle itself. Coming for the loaves and fishes is a normal and a natural procedure up to a certain point. It is natural for any one of us who has a discord, an inharmony, a sin, a false appetite, a disease, a lack. It is natural for us to want these removed. But it is also natural, once we have seen one or two or three such demonstrations, to ask why, how, what is behind this, what is the law behind it, what is the principle behind it, how does this happen? And then you may rightly say you are no longer interested in loaves and fishes alone, but now you have come to seek the principle of life, the mystery of life, the secret, the harmony that lies behind the visible effect. When this comes, you will not find yourself fooled by appearances anymore. And I can illustrate this by something that has been happening here in this city this week. And I have no doubt that it's happening in other cities this week too. It is very evident in my telephone calls, cables, letters, that many people are concerned because Mr. Khrushchev is getting very nasty with President Eisenhower and getting very rough with the United States, and it has disturbed a lot of people. Now, as a matter of fact, had these people been studying spiritually, instead of being disturbed, they would have been gratified and overjoyed and realized at last somebody has been doing spiritual work, and now we will come out of our difficulties. Why? Because if you'd have been studying spiritually, you would have known that ever since the days of Stalin, that he and Bulganin and Khrushchev have been smiling and playing tootsie-wootsie with Mr. Roosevelt and Mr. Truman and Mr. Eisenhower, and being the best of buddies, and then hitting them over the head and taking away everything they had. Taking away Europe from them, taking away China from them, and taking away about everything we had to give them too, mounting into the tens of billions of dollars, not counting all of the secrets of atomic energy and all the rest of our great scientific discoveries that we have given them, because they were smiling at us. They were playing pleasant. They were inviting us to conferences. And for 20, 30 years this has been going on, and all of the time we have been taken like gamblers at a phony gambling table, taken just for the boobs that we are and have been, taken in by people who told us in plain English they were out to get us, that they would lie, cheat, and defraud, that they would take us by and large and make us like it. And all this time we didn't believe them because they were smiling when they said it, like Hitler did. Hitler told us the same thing. I'm building an air force, I'm going to wreck Europe, and if I go down I'll take the world with me. And all of this time we so disbelieved him that we just let him go in and do it. And then afterward blamed it on whom? Hitler. And now we're blaming it on Khrushchev and Stalin. And they have told us, if you don't believe me, go to the public library and get out all of the speeches of Stalin, Bulganin, and Khrushchev, and see if they once tried to deceive you as to their intention. And they told you that all those conferences were tricks, and they told you that all these meetings that we've sent delegations to were only to stall for time, and they said it openly, but they smiled while they did it. And not having had a government in all of these years that had experience in international affairs, we just sat around and took it. Now that these people are coming out in the open and letting us know how they feel, don't you know that nothing but spiritual power could have brought that out into the open, so that now we can prepare, so that now we can know how to talk to them, so now we can know how to deal with them? Don't you know that now that the era is open and you're confronted with it, now you can intelligently work with it and know what to do? And heretofore you were working in the blind. Well, just one more word on that subject. Don't be concerned about all of this rough stuff that's coming across from Russia. It's the healthiest sign we've had since 1930. It's the first time that we have been awakened to the truth since 1930. The first time anyone has told us the truth about international affairs since 1930, and glory in it and rejoice in it, because now everyone in this government and in all of the foreign governments will at least know where they stand and how to handle it. Now, the reason that I bring this to your attention is not for the sake of talking politics, but rather to illustrate how it is that when you have no pains and when you have a sufficient amount of money to meet your needs, you think that all is well and you're dying. The very moment you have no pain, the very moment you have no lack of money, the very moment you have a little happiness in your family, you don't need a practitioner and you don't need a teacher. You are convinced that all is well. And every day you're aging, and every day some disease is forming in the body. When it finally comes out, then everyone says, oh, that was accumulating for 5 years in your system, or 3 years, and now it's coming to light. And all that time you were sleeping peacefully in the dream of health. And it wasn't health at all. It was just painlessness. That's all. It is in the time when you have physical health, mental health, moral health, and financial health that you should be doing your most serious work to make the transition from humanhood to Christhood. And this is the goal of the infinite way. This is the work of the infinite way. This is the purpose behind there being an infinite way. The infinite way isn't a healing teaching. Healing is merely that part of it which indicates the fact that there is an effect from God realization. But God realization is the goal. But a healthy person has just as much reason to attain God realization as a sick one. Don't you see that as long as you're living the human life, that every day you're coming closer to the grave? Every day you're coming closer to old age. Every day you're coming closer to disease. If you continue in the human scene, do you not see that every human being comes to a sad end because they stay in the human scene, and because there is nothing for a human to do but age and die? Whether they age at 70 or 80 or 90, it is inevitable that a human being deteriorate, age, and finally die. And the only ones who are exceptions to that rule are those who have sufficiently understood a spiritual message as to do not only as much work when they are well, but even more work when they are well, to make the transition from humanhood to the spiritual base of their Christhood. Paul speaks of that man who has his being in the earth, the earthly man, the man of earth. That is the way it is, the man of earth. And then he speaks of that man who has his being in Christ. Now, the man of earth is the creature who is not under the law of God, neither indeed can be, and that's a human being. If we are under the law of God, or in proportion as we are under the law of God, we're not aging, we're not getting sick, we're not dying, and when the day comes for transition, it will be a natural one. For to all of us comes a time of leaving this plane of consciousness and entering the invisible. It is not meant that anyone remain on earth forever. And therefore, do not believe for a moment that you can find some kind of a religious system that is going to keep you on the earth forever. It is true that we have had in this age a man who reached the age of between 600 and 700 years on earth, and it is also true that some others are known who have attained 200 or 300 years. But out of the hundreds of billions on earth that have been, there's only a record of a half a dozen or so within the last century, and there have been dozens of billions since then. So do not have any idle dreams of staying on earth for 200 or 300 years. And that doesn't preclude the possibility that some one of you may do it. But for the rest of us, at least, let's not waste time in idle dreaming, and be satisfied that when the time comes for a transition, at least that we make it without remaining around as hopeless, helpless invalids for our families to go broke supporting. Now, it is possible for us to attain the 60, 70, and 80, and in many cases the 90s, and do it in perfect health and with all of the faculties. I've known quite a few personally who have done it. But if it is to be done, it is to be done by coming to know God aright. It is to be done by making the transition from the man of earth to that man who has his being in Christ. It is done by making the transition consciously into our spiritual identity. And the first step in making that transition, and of course the first step is always the most difficult one, the first step is learning to judge not after appearances. In other words, don't rejoice when you see a healthy human and get sad when you see a sick one, because in both cases you are witnessing an illusion. Whatever it is that you see with your eyes, and regardless of how you see it, it is not the fact of being. The mere fact that we may be looking at a handsome man or a beautiful woman does not testify to what is going on in their consciousness, or even to what may be going on in their bodies. And on the other hand, we may sometimes witness a sick person or a poor one who is getting closer to the spiritual image than the healthy one, because those with the heaviest problems have the greatest need to dig in and make the transition into spiritual awareness. Now, the one reason that we can have so few practitioners in our work, at least so few at the present time, is that our healing work only begins when an individual has learned not to judge by appearances, not to rejoice in health, and not to bemoan sickness, but to look through both of these to the reality. Now, when our thought is on the level of reducing someone's fever or someone's lumps, or when our thought is on the level of employing the unemployed or getting supply for those who lack, we are on the human scene merely trying to patch up the illusion, merely trying to patch up those who already are not under the law of God, and even after they're healthy still won't be under the law of God. Our work deals with this. God constitutes individual being, your being. But I can't see that with my eyesight. Therefore, I have no interest in the picture that I behold, nor can I hear it with my ears. And the mere fact that you say, I had a pain and thank you, it isn't there anymore, doesn't convince me that you're a spiritual being. It merely tells me that temporarily you're a little healthier than you were before. That has no significance whatsoever in your spiritual life, and actually it is only a first step. And whereas most students will tell me the very moment the pain is gone or the lump is gone, now I'm fine, encloses a check, thank you, and call the work finished. What I like to hear is, now we've got that out of the way, let's begin the real journey and establish me in my spiritual identity. Because now I have no pain, now I have no lack, now I can really give my time and attention to finding God. I think one of the saddest experiences that comes in the lives of those of us who have been in the work as many years as I have is the calls that come to us from practitioners and teachers who have been in the work years and years and years, and then all of a sudden are finding themselves in just as bad a plight as some of those who never heard of metaphysics. And then you wonder, what did it all amount to all of these years if it involved nothing more than just getting healthy today instead of a pain of yesterday? What has been achieved in life if the whole life was just spent being a medical practitioner, just changing health, ill health to sickness, or lack to a temporary sense of abundance? Whereas these years should have been spent in making the transition. Now, I know that while we are in the depths of sickness or lack or unhappiness, that it is not a simple matter to care whether or not we reach God, as long as we can at least get rid of this pain or lack or unhappiness. I realize that. But I also know that the moment the acute part of our problem is past, we should be beginning to look for the principle of life, the cause, and not just rejoice in these petty little effects that are all too commonplace after 90 years of metaphysical practice on earth. I don't see how anyone in this work can glory too much in the healings, knowing what marvels of healings we have been witnessing in the metaphysical world, in all of the different teachings of the metaphysical world for these past 90 years. Why wonder about them? Why glory in them? They're as common as salt on a table. But the thing to wonder at is, what did it? What brought it about? And how can we go and do likewise? Because that's the secret. Go thou and do likewise. It isn't enough to rejoice over healings, because once you understand the nature of healing work as it has been revealed in our work, you'll find that healing is not difficult. Sometimes it's delayed. That doesn't mean it's difficult. It means that we have things in our consciousness that have not yet been met, that must be met before the visible healing can take place. And that doesn't mean that there's some sin in your consciousness or some hidden fault. It's usually some state of ignorance, something of which you have had no enlightenment on. And until you do, the effect remains, the ill effect. So therefore, the fact that some healings take long is not of too much importance. As a matter of fact, it's better that they take long than that they should be brought about in a hurry without bringing to us some light on the principle behind it, or that it should take place before there has been a change of consciousness within us. So the mere fact that some healings seem to be protracted should not disturb a student. The fact that some do not take place as rapidly as you would like them very often in the end will bring you to a great rejoicing, because the interval made it possible for you to not be concerned with the effect, but to go thou and do likewise and learn the cause. Now, here we are with principles that really do bring about very fine healings. It is only because of this that in 14 years the Infinite Way has been able to go around the world and find its books published in the United States and in England and in Holland and Germany, Switzerland, and now in Japan, only because of the healings. It has had no advertising, it has had no promotion, it has had no financing. It has all happened merely on the word of the healings that have gone around the globe. So that healing is not too difficult a thing, but the healing, without an understanding of what brings the healing, leaves one in the same position as if they'd gone to a doctor and gotten healed, and the next week something else came up that had to be healed, and then something the following week or month that had to be healed. Our work then is to bring about the healing so that you may know that behind this work there is a principle, and that the principle is a spiritual principle that really functions and operates on a very practical level, that of producing harmony where discord was before. Then, having come that far, this work should arouse such an interest in the student as to what made it happen. Why could you bring forth healing? Since, as the Master said, I am a man such as you are. We are all the same in our humanhood. The only difference is the degree of spiritual enlightenment that takes place within us. Now, in healing work, you have already been shown that the first principle must be impersonalization. Now, heretofore, in the major metaphysical teachings, this principle has not been taught. It wasn't known. The attempt always was to find the error in you and uncover it and remove it, or to find the wrong thinking within you and then change it to right thinking, or to discover something somewhere within your consciousness. Perhaps you have been told you should be more loving, or you can't get healed because you're not grateful enough, or perhaps you can't get healed because you don't read enough pages every day in this book, or you don't get healed because you don't do church work, or you don't tithe. Always, it seems, the fault is with you. Now, the basis of our healing work is that the fault is not with you, that it is completely separate and apart from you. It is entirely impersonal, and therefore this work never gives a treatment to you. If any treatment is ever given, the practitioner gives it to the practitioner, to himself or herself, but never to you. The reason is, it isn't you who has to be healed. The appearance is being given to the practitioner, and it is what the practitioner does with it that determines what is going to happen to you. If the practitioner is sufficiently in the spirit so that they do not judge by appearances, so that they do not take in the testimony of the physical senses, what they see, hear, taste, touch, or smell, if the practitioner has risen to where they are sufficiently indifferent to the name or nature of the appearance, then that practitioner is in a position to declare, this is not of man or of God. This is of the carnal mind, which is a belief in two powers. And without that belief in two powers, there would not even be this appearance of discord. In other words, the origin of all evil is in the universal belief in two powers. It is not your belief, and it is not mine, even though to some extent you are suffering from it, and so am I. Every one of us on this human plane that has the least trace of discord is suffering from that discord only because there is a universal belief in two powers. Now, so far as we know, no one has risen into the absolute of awareness where they can say, I do not experience anything from the belief in two powers. In other words, I could swallow a gallon of poison and it wouldn't touch me at all. Or I could jump off the Empire State Building and just float to the ground. No, that hasn't happened yet in recorded history. Even the Master had wounds from the sword and the nails. Even the Master fainted and to human sense passed from life. But this was only because the last enemy that shall be overcome is death. In other words, this belief in two powers has its extreme in the belief that there is both life and death. Now, as long as we have a trace of belief left in us that there is both life and death, even if it's a faint trace, in that degree are we subject to the discords in some nature, some degree of the flesh. On the other hand, in the degree that we lose our faith in life and death, in that degree do we become free of its effects and become healers. And that is why our students are asked to believe this. Believe it or not, they must believe this. They must come to a place where they can sincerely, honestly face themselves and say, I do not care whether I'm alive or dead to human sense. It makes no difference to me whether I live on this plane or the other plane, whether I remain on this plane for a longer time or leave it 5 minutes from now. It makes no difference to me because I have recognized that there is no such thing as death. And therefore, whatever that experience may be, it is a passing from glory to glory. It is a passing from visibility into invisibility, but it is not death. Then in the degree that one of our practitioners has realized that, in that degree, disease has no reality in their consciousness, and therefore, when you bring to them a claim of disease, since they've already overcome the fear of death, disease itself must disappear. We are told that the last enemy that shall be overcome is death. So therefore, let us overcome that last belief first, because it is the most important, and it's the one we have to start with. We cannot wait for the end of time to overcome the belief in death. We will never be healers, not very good ones, and certainly not spiritual ones, until we have come to see that neither life nor death can separate me from life. Neither life nor death can separate me from the love of God. Neither life nor death can separate me from the life of God. Neither life nor death can separate me from the consciousness of God. And even if I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I shall fear no evil, for I'll be alive in God. And as we reach that, we are making the transition from the man of earth to that man who has his being in Christ, because, as Paul says, whether visible or invisible, I know not. And so whether visible or visible, I care not, since I will be I, and I will be living, and I will be functioning. I will be in God, and God in me. then you see, you are at the position where you don't look at a smiling person and think it's your friend, and a scowling person and think it's your enemy. You're more apt to have the discernment to know that the scowling person means better to you than some of those who are doing an awful lot of smiling. You learn the difference between a true smile and a false one. Your spiritual discernment will enable you to know when a smile is one of sincerity and integrity, or whether it's one that has a knife hidden behind the back. So it is that you will also know that if someone scowls at you, that they may be your best friend. They may have your best interests at heart, or at least they're revealing to you that which you need to know. And so you won't be so hasty to judge the smiling face or the scowling face, but with your spiritual discernment you will see through both of them. And when you do, you will catch the secret of our healing work, which is this: the ability to look through even what seems to be a healthy body and not glory in it, or the ability to look through the diseased body and not fear it, knowing that both of these are hiding the truth. The truth is, your body is the temple of the living God. Your mind is the temple of God. Your soul, your consciousness, because God has his dwelling place in you as you have your dwelling place in God. I and my Father are one, and I am in God, and God is in me, and I am the temple of the living God. My body is the temple of the living God, and this is true whether it seems to be a whole body or a half a body. This ability not to judge by appearances testifies to the degree of your spiritual consciousness. If your emotions are still aroused by erroneous appearances, or if your joys and happinesses are aroused by seeing what looks like a healthy body or what looks like a full pocketbook, you're being misled. You're judging after appearances, and you are thinking of those appearances in a wrong way. It is like looking at the fruit tree that is full of fruit. Be very careful, because tomorrow it may not have any. And if you're glorying in the tree full of fruit, tomorrow you'll be sorrowing in the tree empty of fruit. Whereas all of the time, it isn't the fruit or the lack of fruit that counts. What counts is the life in the tree. Because with or without fruit, there's going to be more. And yesterday's manna is not too important, because God's manna falls every day. And if you can look through the appearance of a full tree and realize the invisible spiritual life that is there, your tree will never be barren. In the same way, if you can look through both the healthy body and the diseased body, or the healthy mind or the diseased mind, and realize that these are but temporary effects, but that underlying this is the life of God, the mind of God and the body of God, you will have risen so far out of mortal consciousness that you will first of all be a healer, next you will be a teacher, and then the day will come when you'll go beyond both healing and teaching into entry into the very center of life itself, where you become a part of all life. You are the life of the tree and the life of the grass and the life of the birds and the life of the fish, because you are one with all life. You're neither healing it nor teaching it, you're being it. That, of course, is the mystical stage. But all the rest of this is leading up to that stage. That is our function, and that is our work. Don't find fault with a young student who is very eager for a healing, because that's natural and they're entitled to it. But you can afford to start correcting them if after several healings they still have no interest in any subject but the healing. If they haven't been awakened to what lies behind a healing, it's best to give your time and attention to those who do want to know the mystery of life. You know, it's a wonderful thing once we start to get interested in this mystery of life, because this mystery is entirely behind the scenes of visible form and effect. No one can penetrate the mystery of life by playing around with forms and effects. Not any more than a doctor can discover the secrets of life by operating on bodies. All he can ever get to know is effects. He never can know what makes the effects, what forms life, what gives life. It is only when you have pierced the veil of illusion, it is only when you have seen behind the scene of visible effects that you can begin to perceive the mystery of life, and then you will know something wonderful. You will know that human history has brought forth many, many wonderful civilizations. Civilizations as great as the one we have today, and some of them even greater. The only thing they lack that we have is mechanical gadgets. But some of them must have even had mechanical gadgets that we haven't yet discovered. Because when you see some of the buildings they erected, you know they must have had some of the building equipment that we haven't even yet discovered. And aside from these gadgets, in the art or arts of these civilizations, you can see things that we today don't dream of. And you will know that there were great civilizations that have gone from the earth, disappeared from the earth, and the history of all of them is the same. They have been overcome by might and by power. All civilizations are doomed as long as the only answer is might or power. If you think that there is any might or power that can save this civilization, you have not been a student of history, and not been a student of truth. Because the only attempt to save this civilization has been in the creating of greater powers, atomic power, nuclear power, whatnot power, all kinds of power supposedly greater than the powers that anyone else have, and now we discover that they have them too. And therefore, if this civilization is to be saved by power, the power hasn't yet been evolved. Because all we have are not saving powers, we have destructive powers. Now the question that I'm going to leave with you is this: is the discovery, which is the basis of all infinite way work, is this discovery of non-power, which is effective in restoring harmony in our experience, is this sufficient to save the present civilization and the future ones? Now, this much is known. And when I say it is known, I'm going to tell you that in speaking with some very big men, men in high positions, it is known that it is dubious whether this civilization is to be saved or whether our freedom in this very country is to be saved. It is a very questionable affair with many people in high places. Will this present government survive these next few years, your time and my time. And the reason is, will it be overcome by one of the three powers that now endanger it? In the human picture, no one has an answer. In the human picture, no candidate running for office has offered a solution to any of the three major problems that confront us. So far, nobody on the world's public front has offered a solution to any one, much more all, of these problems. That doesn't say that one won't be found. It's only saying that up to this moment, none has been offered. Now the question is, will the principle of none-power be the solution? And the only ones who can answer are those who know. In other words, we are not really in danger from any of the forces that threaten us today, whether from outside or from inside, if our people will accept this responsibility. The kingdom of God is within you. All of the power necessary to save this world is within you, and there are enough people in this room hearing my voice actually to save the entire world from all of the troubles that are threatening it, of every nature. If everyone in this room would be willing to dedicate themselves, and that doesn't mean leaving their families, and it doesn't mean going away in convents or monasteries, and it doesn't mean neglecting your home life. It merely means to dedicate your thought, your conscious thought, to this: the constant remembrance, day and night, that there is no power external to me, that all power is within me. I have been given God-given dominion, and since God's dominion cannot be divided, I have all of it. All of the kingdom of God is within me, and I release it into this world. I am a transparency through which God's power flows to all of this world, not only my friends but my enemies, not only to my allies but my enemies, to all my neighbors. I am a transparency through which God's dominion flows to the world. The kingdom of God is within me, and all of the power necessary is within me. If you need any proof of it, just think of the power that the one man Moses had in leading the whole Hebrew race out of slavery. One man. Think of the power Jesus had in leading a whole world out of ecclesiastical ignorance and tyranny. One man. And then remember this, that you are that same man. God has given you the same dominion that he gave Moses or Jesus, only they so well knew it that they were willing to be a transparency for its release. But it must be consciously done. It can't be unconsciously done. You can't turn around and say, oh, the power of God flows through me, all is well. No, there has to be a continuous, conscious realization, I and my Father are one. And God's dominion flows through me to all of this world, and beside me there is no other power. All of the power of the carnal mind is the arm of flesh or nothingness. All of the power of the human mind is carnal or temporal or nothingness. All Hezekiah, all those armies that are greater than we are, and Hezekiah says, Fear not. They have only the arm of flesh. They have only temporal power. And all we have to do when we read in the paper or hear on the radio, when we hear that the enemy is so almighty powerful that he can afford to be fresh and impertinent and insulting and degrading, all we have to do is not get mad at him. Not get mad. How can we resent insanity? Smile and realize that's just the way blustering nothingness is. That's just the way mortal mind is. It gets awful loud and nasty because it's trying to cover up the fact that it hasn't power. How can the carnal mind or mortal mind have power if God is infinite and if God is where I am? Then the place whereon I stand is holy ground, because God is flowing where I am. And all out here, this is the carnal mind, the arm of flesh. Don't fear it. You'll never be a practitioner, you'll never heal if you fear disease, if you fear death, if you fear accident. Only when you can look out upon this world and say, this is a carnal mind, this is a temporal power, but we have the all and only power, the Lord God Almighty. Now, I know there are enough in this room that if they would hold to this truth, that all the armies of the aliens are nothing, because they're temporal power. All the armies of the aliens, on the earth, under the sea, and up in the air, all the armies of the aliens, meaning all mortal mind or carnal mind, is temporal power. There's only one thing you have to do, two things you have to do to make it effective. The first is, you must consciously know this as many times night and day as it comes to your thought. And the second thing is, you have to keep it secret and not tell anyone you're doing it. The moment you break secrecy, you've lost your power. You dare not tell it to your own husband or wife, or child or parent. The moment it crosses your lips, so far as you are concerned, the power's gone. You've lost it. The rest of us won't. Those who can keep our lips sealed will hold the power within ourselves. Those who can't must lose it. They waste it. It's just like putting a pin in a balloon. The gas won't stay in, and the power won't stay in those who open their mouths. For this is a mystery of life. Now, as you know, all that we've said this week is on tape, and others will hear it, and that is well, because it will be going into their ears individually as it is going into your ears now, and they will have the same opportunity to either hold it in secrecy and be one with us in our work in the world, or they can blab and lose their own power. Of course, it won't hurt us. No, that is one of the great mysteries of the infinite way. We have learned this. We have no power to injure anyone but ourselves. God is your being, and believe me, I can't harm your being. God is my being, and you can't harm my being. I am one with God. Therefore, we have no power to harm each other. Any power that we have for destruction is self-destruction.